This is Marketing from the Front Lines, where we speak with B2B marketers who are in the trenches, bringing technology to market. Here's your host, Brett Stapper, CEO of Frontlines.io.
Hey, everyone, and thanks for listening. Today, we're speaking with Bobby Vo, Head of Growth of Authentic. Bobby, how are you?
I'm good, Brett. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm super excited for our conversation here. So how we like to begin these conversations is with the big question of why and how. How'd you end up in this world of marketing?
Oh, man. I don't know. Let's just say I didn't aim for it, but I think I'm a big believer in you always end up where you're supposed to be. And I think after a whirlwind of a consulting career, a career in agriculture, and a career in tech, I kind of always found myself drawn to how do you communicate and tell the story? And ultimately, how do you bring people, fix the problems that everyone's kind of facing on a day-to-day basis? I think marketing was the answer to that question.
And with Authentic, was that your first growth role, or have you had similar titles in the past?
I would say it's my first dedicated role in a growth situation. I've had consulting advisory roles. I've had call it like product roles, but I've never really spent all of my time dedicated to thinking about how do we make this thing bigger? How do we get this idea in the hands of others? And so, yeah, it's a new foray for me as well.
And when you joined Authentic, what was the kind of status quo when you were entering in? What was going on there at the company?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, Authentic, it's a very interesting story. So when I first joined, probably about 6 months ago, there's no shortage of things to do. And I think when I joined, everything was shiny, everything we want to do, and which is great. And the level of excitement and energy coming from the room, really, it was palpable. But my first, call it 3 or 4 months was really about just hammering down on what are the number one, number two, number three priorities. What do we got to have? What do we, must do for the year to hit our goals? And then what can we focus on later if we have time? So it's been a lot of prioritization, but also getting to know our customers as well.
What did the first month look like for you? Like, where do you begin? You enter in this company, where do you start?
Yeah. So for me, I would say two things. One was just get a lay of the land. So I didn't come from a insurance background or a fintech background, but it was really just getting myself an opportunity to learn the space and the subject matter, really. And then, so it was a lot of sitting in on our existing partners conversations. So we work with a lot of giant vertical SaaS companies and, large and small and everything in between. So sitting and understanding, what the programs look like, what problems are we solving and understanding the differences in each of the problem sets. So it was a lot of listening, quite frankly. And then I would say, maybe 2 months in, it was a lot of taking the reins. So owning all of our partnerships, owning all of our marketing, owning all of our communications and starting to get things going.
And then can you unpack that, plan or the growth strategy at a high level? Can you unpack that for us?
Yeah. So we're big believers in seeing and doing, right? So when I first came in, I think, like I mentioned earlier, I didn't really know anything about insurance, but really made the ramp up really quick for me was the fact that I could understand exactly what we're doing through a product lens. So I was going through demos of the product, demos of how the product varies from, a fitness customer all the way down to a food and beverage customer. And so really just playing with the product, getting a peek under the hood. How do we underwrite? How do we price? How do we make the button, right? To get people to buy and understand all the little intricacies of putting a very fascinating product together. So yeah, it was a lot of time just asking a lot of frankly dumb questions and having really smart people give me their time of day.
And how many people are you currently managing?
Honestly, I'm the only marketing person at the moment, right? So I own all of our partnerships. I own all of our marketing. I own all of our communications at the moment. And it's great. I mean, not that my team doesn't help in all of that, but, from who owns it and who's responsible, whose neck do you get to choke if something goes wrong, that's me.
Wow. So no pressure on your side.
Yeah, you could say something like that.
What about, as you were building out that program, was there anything surprising that you uncovered just about the insurance space that you're in?
Yeah, I would say there was my initial hypothesis coming into this was how do we educate the end customer? So our end customer, for those who don't know, is our small and medium businesses. And so how do we educate customers on what embedded insurance is, what embedded commercial insurance looks like, how to consume it? Because today, if you go out into the world, people generally have insurance, but that's only because they have to. They've never really spent much time learning about it or really understanding what you need and why you need it. You sort of outsource it to a broker. And so what I've really learned is the education also has to come from our partners. So we are the insurance experts for our partners who we enable this product for. So vertical SaaS companies, franchisors, affinity groups. It's not just educating the SMBs, it's educating our partners and getting them comfortable and confident in our products as well. So that was a big learning, couple months in, and really rejiggering the growth strategy to say, how do we get partners comfortable? And then second step is how do we make sure that, they are able to get their customers comfortable with what we're trying to provide them.
What were you doing or what have you done so far to, build trust with those partners?
Yeah. So this might be a bad take, but I try to teach our partners in the same way that I like to learn. So for me, seeing is believing. I'm a big visual learner. So every time we talk, it's rarely just, people staring at each other through a Zoom or in front of each other, just staring at each other in the eyes. I like to pull up either the product itself or make sure that we have customer testimonials, customer feedback that we can really dissect together. And so really the education process is you should be good at doing this demo as I am and as our salespeople are, right? And so making sure our customers are able to speak to the product by themselves without us in the ring is super important. And I think having a product hands-on type of focus has really been the growth strategy.
Has there been anything that you've tried so far that you were like, I think this is going to be great, and then it just didn't work out?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's no shortage of those. I think, from a marketing lens, there's sending out emails, which I think is pretty bare bones. In some places, it works really well. So you try to take it to another place and you realize that's not how they communicate with their partners, right? Like if they're used to talking to them through the app, and email's going to come off as spam, things like that, that you really have to understand that what works for one customer, even if the customer base is similar, might fall flat completely for another.
What about thought leadership? What does thought leadership mean to the company? Is there a thought leadership playbook there? What does that look like?
Yeah, we're really, really focused on content strategy at the moment. So that's a good place to bring it up. I think we do a lot of things, as I mentioned, in terms of trying to figure out new insurance problems, trying to figure out different, go-to-market strategies for different engagement levels with different groups. And I think part of the content strategy is really getting something down on paper, right? I think documentation has always been something that I've been a big fan of. So when I'm in the room here at Authentic, we hear the most rich conversations I think I've ever heard in my life, but rarely is it put down on paper and, syndicated to a broader audience. So over the next couple of months, we're putting together a lot of different case studies and different types of white papers that really, share the message of what we're thinking and how, our potential partners can get involved if they're interested.
This show is brought to you by Frontlines Media, a podcast production studio that helps B2B founders launch, manage, and grow their own podcast. Now, if you're a founder, you may be thinking, I don't have time to host a podcast. I've got a company to build. Well, that's exactly what we built our service to do. You show up and host, and we handle literally everything else. To set up a call to discuss launching your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. Now, back to today's episode.
Are there any best practices that you hear people talk about with marketing that annoy you or you strongly disagree with?
Yeah, this is one where I might get a little bit of a slack. I think that growing up for my career in the 2016s, 2017s, 2018s, there was a big focus on customer centricity, being customer centric, which was just another way of saying, hey, whatever your customers tell you, just do it. Right. And I think as I've gone through my career, I really think that that's not the proper way to market to your customers and to get value from your customers. I think customer centricity, I think the next evolution of it is how do you interpret the feedback that they're getting? I think a good example that we always hear is, if you would have asked people back in the day, how to improve their horse or their transportation mechanisms, they would have just said, I wish I would have had faster horses, as opposed to, getting a car with four wheels that could, completely change the way we transport in the world. So I take that into heart, which is, hey, I know what you're saying, but what do you really mean? What's actually giving you heartburn? And I think that's my take on customer centricity is it's not just blindly listening to whatever your customers say. It's kind of reading between the lines and understanding, what's going to drive value for them and what can actually make their lives a lot better. And that's the approach we're taking here at Authentic.
Any other hot takes that you have about marketing? I always love hearing the hot takes.
Yeah. Honestly, my hot take is the best place, at least for our vertical SaaS partners, right? I think there's a lot of focus that goes on in the product. And we always know that there's a lot of, call it, intention put to the product. But when it comes to adding new features, when it comes to bringing on spotlights, that's particularly hard. And I think like any program where you want to be successful and draw value to your customers has to come from the platform. And I think marketing can't just solve all your problems, right? Like you have to use your platform as a way to market. So for example, what we run into with a lot of our partners is, hey, we think that, this is a really awesome product and we think that our customers can really benefit from this, but we just want to start with a lot of emails. And we think that that falls flat a lot of the times, frankly, because the reason why your customers want to partner with you and stay with you is because of this amazing product that you built. So anything that you do should be centered around that. And I think, frankly, whether that's email campaigns or blog posts, anything like that, that has to have a product-centric lens, which at least in my experience has seen the most fruit.
Are there any marketers that you're following right now? And they don't have to be in the insurance tech space, but just anyone in B2B tech that you're seeing the work that they're doing and you think that they're smart and others should be following along?
Yeah, I would say where I find a lot of inspiration, maybe I'll turn your question a bit. I find a lot of inspiration from places outside of B2B, right? So I find a lot of inspiration, for example, a big brand that I just adore these days is Trader Joe's. I know that that's like a cult following. And for context, I love cooking. I cook pretty much all my meals as much as I can. And I go to Trader Joe's twice a week. And it just hit me while I was thinking about this podcast. I have never seen a Trader Joe's ad, not once in my entire life. But when I'm walking through Trader Joe's and I'm in that store, it's like a masterclass of marketing without any marketing, right? It's about the customer experience, not the impressions that you get. It's low key, but high impact when it comes to marketing. And I think that every inch of their store is engineered to spark word of mouth and loyalty. And I try to find ways to bring that into our product here. And I know that that's borderline impossible with an insurance product, but I love the endeavor on the impossible.
That was a great answer. My father-in-law is the COO of Trader Joe's, and he's in the room next door, actually. So if he's listening in and heard that, he's probably very excited.
Yeah, and I mean it. Like, I'm a big fan of word of mouth, like deep customer experience. And I think that like the best, what we've seen from our customers, the best marketing that you can have is when a customer says, some people fill out a voluntary survey for us and all the comments are just, wow, this is fantastic. I've never had such an easy experience in my life. My friend, let's call him Trader Joe. My friend Trader Joe told me about this product and I can't believe that it's this easy.
What I find so fascinating about Trader Joe's is the fact that people even talk about it. For the most part, grocery is just kind of one of those things that's like commoditized. There's not anyone who's like, oh, I love this grocery store. I have to stop there. Maybe Erewhon is the exception to that rule, but that's the new up and comer there. But it is crazy. Like people love Trader Joe's and they've built this cult following, which has to be so hard to do in an industry like that they're in.
Yeah. And I think maybe the way to sum them up, and one reason why I'm so inspired by them, is that it feels like, to your point, Brett, earlier, is they just turn commodities into trends, right? Like a good example is like the everything but bagel seasoning.
Yeah.
We've had that forever, right? But it just turns into this cult following. And the question I flip to myself constantly is, how do we turn insurance, a commodity, quite frankly, into something that people can have a good experience with? And because it's a commodity today, nobody really tries to do that, or at least nobody's successfully done it well.
It seems like that's the ultimate play though, right? Not just in your industry, but any industry. If you're looking at, okay, we're in a commoditized space, I feel like providing an insanely good, memorable customer experience, like that is the way to stand out and be different. And whatever else the magic is behind Trader Joe's and how they build that brand, I don't even understand how they do it, but they've managed to pull it off. That seems like that's the answer if you're in a commoditized space.
Totally. And I think that one thing that happens with, the way we go to market is we go to market through partners. So it's a B2B2C model, is that, we can fine tune this experience to the best of our ability and we're doing it every day. People love it. But to offer that experience through the lens of a platform that people trust and use to run their businesses every day, that's really where the magic happens. We've heard, we can't believe that this is available on the platform today. Like, that's saving me so much time, when I need to get my documents for my certificates of insurance, or I need to add an additional insured to my policy. Like, I can't believe that I'm able to do this in the product. And so we take no credit for it, by the way. When this is all said and done, like, we have no interest in the credit. We just care about making our partners give that experience to their end customers. And I think that, it creates a stickiness that, is only going to show down the line.
This show is brought to you by the Global Talent Co., a marketing leader's best friend in these times of budget cuts and efficient growth. We help marketing leaders find, hire, vet, and manage amazing marketing talent for 50 to 70% less than their US and European counterparts. To book a free consultation, visit globaltalent.co.
Something else that you said a couple of minutes ago that really resonates with me is, this idea of not just taking inspiration from our industry, B2B tech. I host another podcast called The Future of Consumer Marketing, and I just interview CMOs of consumer brands. It's so much fun, and I learned such a tremendous amount from them that you just don't get in the B2B world. We hired a head of marketing a couple of weeks ago, and we were, having our conversations, and she presented her plan, and she was studying our competitors. I told her, like, I don't give a shit about the competitors. Like, here are my favorite consumer brands that, I think are targeting a somewhat similar audience. So there's audience overlap. Like, tell me what they're doing. Because for the most part, all B2B marketing that I see sucks. So I don't really want to follow what someone else is doing that sucks. Let's go see what like the best consumer brands are doing. And let's make our B2B marketing feel much more like consumer marketing.
Yeah, yeah. I think that you could apply that type of lens to a lot of different things: product, marketing, sales. When I came through my, group in consulting, one of the things that we would do is we would take examples of things that we're seeing in other industries and bring them into other places, right? And so I bring that here on the marketing side. Like, I think another brand that gives me some level of inspiration or a high level of inspiration, or at least been really impressed with, is Celsius. Are you familiar?
Oh, yeah. I know camera's off, but I have one at all times.
Yeah, I just feel like Celsius is like the perfect word of mouth marketing, right? Like, you don't really see much marketing from the company. You might see like, what is it, like a storefront neon sign every now and then. And, I think the only other example of Celsius marketing outside the can that I've seen is Tommy Paul, who's an American tennis player. I think I saw a logo on his shirt recently. Like, that might be it. But everything else that I know about Celsius is literally because people tell me about Celsius. Like, I see it in their hands and I go, what is that? They go, oh, you don't know what this is? And they just explain the whole value prop to me. And I've never once heard from this company. And I think that there's some kernel of inspiration there that, I'd love to apply to Authentic. I haven't quite figured it out yet, frankly, but I think that it's something to strive for.
It's such a good call out for that brand as well. That's another brand that I love, a big consumer of it. And man, I can't tell you how often, like, I go on these, really, really long runs on weekends, and halfway through, I'm like, all right, I need a Celsius, and I'll stop by Walgreens and go to that section, and all the Celsius are sold out. And then next to it, there's all these different energy drinks, totally stocked full. No one's buying them. And I just think that's so fascinating. What I didn't realize, or I'll ask you this question. Do you realize how big Celsius is, the company?
I looked it up at some point, but I think it has a B at the end of it.
Yeah, it's a $10 billion market cap, and it's like a 25-year-old company. For some reason in my mind, I thought this was like, a small upstart. I didn't realize just like how long they'd been at it and how big that company was. But I think it's a $10 billion market cap.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like, if I unpack it a little bit more, if I go to a bar or a tavern, all the bartenders are now drinking Celsius. And when I go to the gym, every person is drinking a Celsius, right? And no one says anything. You just see it a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's like the word of mouth is fantastic, but sometimes, the product should just speak for itself. And I think that's another great example.
That's where I'm kind of jealous of. If you have a consumer brand, it's like, it's much more likely that you're going to be in those situations where people are just going to like see you using the product. Like the tools I use, like no one's going to see me using it, like sitting in my office, just like working behind the scenes, but Celsius has that built in.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Anything else on the marketing plan that you want to unpack? If we just think ahead, we're a third of the way already through 2025. What else is top of mind for you in 2025?
Yeah, I think for our partners, it's really about leveraging the amazing success that we've had. So we've been in the market for about a year and a half. It's all about how do we get this product out there? And I think as we go through the first year of policies being sold and, the policies being up for renewal, it's how do we collect not just the value that we've been able to bring to customers, but how do we portray out into the market, what this means for our partners, right? Like at the end of the day, we're here to serve the small and medium businesses, but we're using our partners' reputations to do it. And so we want to make sure that when we collect the feedback, when we collect the notes on the experience from the end customers, how do we make sure that that is reflected, at least favorably, to the reflections of, what that does to our partners' brands. So that's top of mind. How we do it, I think it's going to tie a lot into the content strategy piece that I was talking about earlier, but that is a goal that we're trying to achieve.
The way we like to end these interviews is just with a question about advice. So if you can scream out there to any other people who are in a similar position to you or similar title or similar responsibilities, what's your number one piece of marketing advice for them right now?
It's a good question. I would say fail, right? Like fail. Like I think, especially at the stage of, business that we're at a Series A startup, you're not going to have the right answers, right? Like part of the reason why we're doing this is because we don't know the right answer and we're constantly trying to optimize and figure it out. I think try to optimize your speed to trying something and then fail and get the lessons quickly, right? I don't want to, sound cliche and fail fast, but it's more just about don't get stuck in analysis paralysis, which I oftentimes come across, with myself and others. But it's what's good enough for you to go try it. And then how do you figure out the answer whether or not this thing works quickly?
I've been mind blown how good ChatGPT is for navigating that analysis paralysis where you're just completely frozen. You don't know which path to take. Just going to ChatGPT for 5 minutes and having it flush out the paths and list it out for you. It's incredibly, incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I think that, using on the ChatGPT vein, what I've really found fascinating about ChatGPT is I use it to arrive at an answer quickly, like in my own personal life. I have a hypothesis I want to test and I want to see what it spits out. I use it as a thought partner rather than like a content generator, which I think a lot of people I know, don't really know how to use it. And they see it as a way of like, oh, it can just write my emails for me, which I think it's probably great at doing. But I use it because I'm really good at being critical, either with myself or just with content or materials. And so if you expedite the time that I can examine that content, I kind of spit out the bad pancake, is what I say. That helps me say, no, this is actually what I really want. It's not about how do I get to the right answer the first time, but how do I get to the wrong answer first so that I can get to the right one.
100% aligned there. And I do feel like so many people get ChatGPT wrong. Yeah, the other day I published an article and I have a custom Claude bot that I use for writing content. And I definitely use Claude, but it still took me like 2.5 hours. It still took a lot of time, but normally it would take me 10 hours or 15 hours. So it for sure shortened it, but it wasn't a matter of like, okay, here's the topic, give me the bullshit AI slop. And then I just copy and paste it into LinkedIn. It was, the thought partner. It helped me brainstorm. I kept putting in questions, doing more research. Like, I think that's how you have to use it. It's not just put in a prompt, copy and paste the output and boom, you got it.
Yeah, that's such a good instance of that. Like I did it the other day when I was trying to write this email. It wasn't anything serious, but I wanted to say, hey, I want to, help me write this email. So I typed out what I wanted. It gave me something. I thought it was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. And I ended up just typing what I really wanted. And I went, wait a minute, this is exactly a fantastic use case for this, right? It saved me so much time to get there.
It's insane how much time it saves you. And it's all the stuff that you like really don't want to do as well. That's what it seems like with a lot of ChatGPT.
Yep.
Amazing, man. This has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I know the audience is really going to enjoy it as well. So thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you, man. If there's anything else that ever comes up, I'm more than happy to answer.
Amazing, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brett.
This episode of Category Visionaries is brought to you by Frontlines Media, Silicon Valley's leading podcast production studio. If you're a B2B founder looking for help launching and growing your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. And for the latest episode, search for Category Visionaries on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.